Okay.
Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and today I'm honored to introduce you all to targeted individual, MK Ultra and electronic mind control survivor and whistleblower, medical abuse whistleblower and survivor, humanitarian, math wizard, simulation and strategy game pattern recognizer, sports and music enthusiast, amateur photographer, travel aficionado, foreign language and country devotee, and brave warrior, Gregory Peary Garbor. Today's episode unfolds the intricate tapestry of Gregory's life, a story that is just beginning to reveal its profound secrets. Gregory was born into a world of shadows and secrets, a lineage steeped in ritual abuse, with connections to government, Freemasonry, military, and valued bloodlines. His journey into understanding his origins began with the puzzle pieces of his great-grandmother's life, labeled crazy for truths perhaps too heavy for her time to hear, and discovering that the man he knew as his father was actually not his biological parent, which added yet another layer of mystery to his birth, which even his own mother can't recall clearly. Greg's life has been a battlefield of targeted abuse, from which he emerges not just as a survivor, but as an educator and a beacon of hope. His experiences with medical abuse have led him down a path of holistic healing, where he has found answers and remedies outside the confines of traditional medicine. This journey has not only been about personal healing, but about sharing knowledge that could save others from the pitfalls of conventional health practices. Today, Gregory is here to share his insights on abuse, survival, health, healing parasites, infections, and detox protocols that have been pivotal in his own recovery from chronic illness and disease. His story is one of resilience, survival, and an unyielding commitment to not only heal himself, but to extend that healing to others. As a humanitarian, Greg channels his experiences into content creation, aiming to enlighten those who share similar shadows in their lives. He speaks on ritual abuse, MK Ultra, electronic harassment, mind control, and the triumph over parasitic afflictions that once left him debilitated. His narrative is not just a recount of personal struggle, but a beacon for those in the dark seeking light. Join us today as we dive deep into Greg's extraordinary journey, a testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal, learn, and to uplift. This is a story of a man who was never meant to be heard, yet here he is, sharing his truth with us, hoping to connect, educate, and perhaps, through your stories, add more pieces to his ever-evolving puzzle. Welcome to an episode today of Discovery, Healing, and Inspiration with a brave warrior turned whistleblower who is here to change the world and to expose and stop global human trafficking and slavery once and for all. Before I finish introducing today's guest, I wanted to give just a couple quick reminders and updates. If you'd like to be on the show, share any information privately with me, or send me a written testimony for my upcoming book series or to be written in a Substack article, you can email me at imagineabetterworld2020@gmail.com or standbysurvivors@protonmail.com. As some of you know, my YouTube channel was recently terminated, and I've been forced to pivot and use other streaming platforms to get this important information out to the public and disclosure communities. Your support would mean the world to me on platforms like Rumble and X, where I'm currently streaming. And I also just started another YouTube channel with the handle @Imagination Podcast Official that I am rebuilding. And I would love to have you all subscribe there as well while I figure out how my new presence on YouTube will look in order to dodge the censorship and backlash for speaking out about these difficult topics. Thank you all on the other side of the screen for helping to make the imagination the safest space on the internet for survivor, whistleblower, advocate, and educator disclosures. So you guys, without further ado, please help me in welcoming today's guest of honor, survivor and thriver, whistleblower, walking miracle, anti-child abuse and targeted individual advocate, content creator, independent researcher and investigator, and an overcomer who is here today against all odds, the one, the only, Gregory Peary Garbor. Gregory, thank you so much for being here with us today. It's an honor to have you on the show.
It's incredible to be here and finally to find the right platform to first have this kind of dialogue. I'm really honored to be here, very humbled.
It's
And
an honor to have you here. We have so much to learn from people like you, and I cannot believe still in this day in 2025 that podcasters all around the world are not inviting you and others who have just such important things to say through their experience and research, to help share with everybody. And I think we know why that is. There's a lot of control out there that exists beyond what we can comprehend consciously and, more than the eye can see. But, it's really an honor to be somebody who can help platform these stories and to help share this information because it's been life-changing. It's changed my life. It's changed so many lives of the people who do come in contact with and get to hear people like you speak. And, you just have an incredible testimony that I know I only heard a little bit about. It's my little doggy. And I'm really excited and thrilled to learn more from you. So I thought we'd go from the beginning. We have so much to talk about in the present day. You've done so much ever since discovering all of these different things about your life, and doing some internal investigating. But that didn't come without kind of a life of hardship and survival and some suffering along the way. So I wanted to share that part of your story and break that down for people, so they can see what a journey you've been on and how far you've come. So let's go back in history and maybe sort of lay the foundation of what the generations before you went through, what they were involved with, and kind of how far back have you been able to discover and put together that this started in your family before you came along.
sure. I have to reflect on a lot of stories, and man, I wish I could have a conversation with my grandfather and such, and my great aunt who was like my grandmother. She raised my mother. But obviously that's not possible today. But I take it for nuggets from what they were communicating with me that really empower me today. They were both really inspirational figures. They grew up in the Great Depression. They were orphans because my great grandmother was deemed crazy, and likely had given lobotomies and all this other stuff, and they grew up I'm born and raised in Clark County, Ohio, where Springfield, Ohio is, which is the largest city, I believe, in Clark County. Um, and there were in the late 1800s, early 1900s in the United States, there were a lot of people locked up for being crazy. Where really it was a lot of people in the big cities on the East Coast and stuff, and they were shipped out in these what we call the orphan trains to the Midwest and other areas of the United States to not only populate the United States with white children, but also to indoctrinate them in Freemasonry or other areas. Um, and I know nothing about my great grandfather, maternal great grandfather. His name was Charles Garber. My great grandmother's name was Mildred, I believe. And I guess she was very, very disturbed. My mother knew her, but I've heard very, very little about that lineage, and I know nothing about my great grandfather. I'm mostly, interestingly, I believe, of European ancestry, and my family lineage goes back prior to the Revolutionary War in the United States. But there's definitely Native American blood in my ancestry as well. And I don't know how much, and I still to this day do not know who my biological father truly is or was. I don't know if he would still be alive today. I'm 50 years old, so but all will be revealed in time. I know that. And so my great grandfather was the oldest of four, and so it was his responsibility to make sure that his siblings had food in their belly and stuff, and while he fought to just get a high school education. He was a member of the Scottish Rite. I don't know how high up he got in the Scottish Rite, But he was a Mason, Freemason. Um, he was a very noble man, and when he was growing up in orphanage in the Great Depression in the United States, he had a few visions. He made promises to himself that he was very American, very pro-American, very Germanic background. We're mostly Germanic and English, my ancestry. But he had a vision that, and he made a promise to himself consistently as a child that his life goals were that his future children, well, that he was going to see every single state of the United States one day, and there were 48 states back then, and he said he was going to put all of his future children through college because he wanted a better life for them, and that one day he was going to own a Cadillac. And the man became a very successful electrical contractor during World War II. He ran a factory in the Minneapolis area. I'm not exactly sure what it was for, but it was for the war efforts. He did not fight because he was too valuable on this side. Then he returned to Springfield, Ohio after World War II and became a very successful electrical contractor and did most of the businesses in Clark County, Ohio, and brought them into the 20th century. And not only did he put his children through college, he also put all 7 of his grandchildren through college. And he also put other people he barely even knew through college. He saw every single state, all 50. And I think he saw every Canadian province. He even spent time on like sort of in his 20s and stuff, finding himself and taking trains, rails through across the United States and stuff, just jumping trains. Interesting man. He was a huge baseball fan and just he had a really good heart, but he was a very quiet man, very quiet leader. And I look almost like the spitting image of him physically. We're both 6'3", and I have his exact same build and a lot of his personality characteristics and stuff. And he always owned a Cadillac my entire life. I remember when I was 18 or 19 years old, I visited him with my sister in Springfield in his retirement community. And he had a bum knee and he was too old to drive. And my sister was 2 years older than me, but he gave me the keys because he knew, now that I reflect, that I didn't have a father figure in my life. And he wanted me to drive, not because I was the man between the siblings, but because he wanted to provide me some of that paternal stuff. But my sister took great offense to that. And we drove from Springfield to Dayton to the Wright Brother Museum, he was a true sort of that American spirit of the greatest generation of that hard work and intelligence and education. If you have the right mindset, you can go anywhere, that you can live the American dream. And he was a very inspirational figure to me. My grandmother, when my mother was 8 years old, first of all, she has 2 older sisters. I believe they're 9, or were 9 and 10 years older. My aunts have passed since, but they went to Ohio, or they were in Ohio. They used to vacation every year in Florida, and they drove down when my mom was 8 years old. It was just my grandparents and my mother. My mother was in the back seat sleeping, I guess, and they were driving back, and they were in Kentucky, and they had a horrible car accident. My grandmother suffered, and this is how my grandfather got his bum knee, and my mom broke her arm and such. But my grandmother wasn't so lucky. She had a horrible head trauma and was institutionalized for the rest of her life, and could barely speak, and had serious cognitive difficulties. Her name was Ellen Garber, Ellen Peary Garber. And yeah, um, but I don't know. It was obviously a very traumatic experience for everybody in my family on my mom's side. And um, but my mom's always denied the trauma, any trauma. She's like, oh, that didn't affect me. That's like you lost your mother. Like it's and so which is just lunacy. My mother's um has narcissistic personality disorder, likely psychopathy, and a bunch of other things. And it's very, very, very cold woman. Very, very, yeah. Um, and my dad, the man who raised me, is also has narcissism as well, and is it's there's something called the dark tetrad, which is a mix of narcissism, psychopathy, psychopath, sadism, and Machiavellianism. It's a cluster of personality disorders or personality traits at clinical levels. That's pure evil, and that they'll do anything to perpetuate their narrative and their to keep their image of their fragile egos so that they're perfect and everybody else is messed up. And I've been the victim of this dark tetrad. I've been the scapegoat of the family and it's subjected to great abuse to keep their narrative going that they are distinguished, wonderful people with and whole and yeah. Anyways, I didn't know my grandmother very well. She lived until she must have passed away when I was in late elementary school or maybe middle school. I can't remember exactly. But I do remember going to Springfield and taking her to the movies, and we went to a Disney movie. It was what was that movie? Song of the South or whatever. Mr. Bluebird on my shoulder and all that. And she had a really great heart, and but she couldn't remember my name. I believe she kept on calling me Marvin was the name, and she was that cognitively impaired, and but she was a good soul, and my grandfather never divorced her, but obviously he had his own personal needs and stuff, and so he ended up meeting another woman who eventually became my step grandmother after my grandmother passed. He married her, Mary Cook, and Mary was a big part of my life as well, and I pay homage to her as well. Um, but then my great aunt Ines, Inez was her name, but it was anglicized to Ines, so she was just known as Ines. Um, and she was living, I believe, in Kentucky with her husband, and it was his name was Lowell Middlehauser, and he ended up taking position with my grandfather's electrical company as a contractor, sort of a business partner. And I guess they had a lot of feuds, but they moved in right next door to each other. Um, and so yeah, but my grandfather wasn't in the position to run the business and raise my mother, and my aunts were off in college and such, right? And so my mother ended up moving in with my great aunt and my great uncle, Aunt Ines and Uncle Lowell, and they had a child who technically I guess is my second cousin, but he's my uncle, Uncle Alan, who became a construction contractor, successful in Southern California. It's a whole nother rabbit hole, what his children have become and his stuff. But anyways, I have to reflect and wonder what it was not. And then another one of his siblings, my Uncle Vance and my Aunt Ida, I believe it was Ida. I can't remember. They passed when I was young. They also lived. There were three homes right next to each other, with lots of land in the back and stuff where they grow their own vegetables and such, and can their own stuff. But there was just, I guess, a lot of infighting, especially between my grandfather Garber, Wilbur, and he went by the name of Webb, and my Uncle Lowell. But I have to wonder given how dysfunctional and my family is and how my mom turned out. I just have to wonder what abuse really happened when she moved in with my Aunt Ines and my Uncle Lowell. My Uncle Lowell was my Aunt Ines ended up developing Alzheimer's and dementia, and my Uncle Lowell died. He was a veteran of World War I, and my Aunt Ines was a nurse, and but he would just boss her around. But she was so loving and nurturing. But she was also a very stern Germanic thing, and it was pull yourself up by the bootstraps and don't complain. If you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And my Uncle Lowell would just scream at her. Well, he was like on his deathbed, just give me this, give me that. And it's really, and he was just very bossy. And so I guess there was just a lot of infighting there in these family dynamics and such. So yeah, obviously this accident, car accident in Kentucky when my mother was 8 had profound impacts, and it's been a lot of that trauma has been projected onto me. As far as the man who raised me, he grew up in a small town called Columbus Grove, Ohio, in the northwest of Ohio, just north of Lima, Ohio, and a town of about 3,000 people. His father grew up in Appalachian, Ohio, and in poverty, and lost his first family in a car accident, and became a raging alcoholic to deal with the trauma and such, and eventually ended up meeting who I called my grandmother, who believed that I was her grandson, and she was an old maid type school teacher, never thought she would get married and stuff. And they had my dad. I'll stop using Eric. I'll just call him my dad from henceforth because that's just the easiest thing to do. My grandfather must have been in his mid-50s. He served in World War One. Actually, he was enlisted and was going to ship out, but I guess he got like his whole platoon got like yellow fever or something, and they never fought. But he ended up my entire childhood. He was living at the VA hospital. I believe it was in Lima, Ohio. Um, but he was very abusive, drunk, physically abusive, and again, I can only assume that sexual abuse happened as well. And he was abusive towards my grandmother, and but my grandmother must have been in her late 30s, early 40s when she had my dad. He was completely unexpected. My grandfather did not love my dad. He resented him, and he was the town drunk of this town of 3,000 people, notorious just for always just being sloshed and making a fool of himself, and that brought my dad great shame. Great shame that he never learned, he never coped with, he never dealt with. And that made him a very evil man because he never learned how to deal with his traumas and or the traumas that were passed down to him generationally. But he became a very successful man. He even though he grew up in poverty, my grandfather was like a crane operator at a limestone quarry and stuff, and spent all his money on booze and gambling and such, and was just not a savory person. But my parents met in college. They went to Ohio Wesleyan University. And they were both born in 1946, just after World War II. They're both baby boomers, the early baby boomers. And they likely got married because my mother got pregnant, and that was just the thing you did back then. And they weren't in love. And my mother resented that, and she felt like that my mother must have been 19, late 19, early 20s when she got knocked up or pregnant. And they got married in June of 1966. 666. I don't know if that has any significance, but and I've recently found out that my dad is a very has been involved in secret societies, involved with the CIA likely, and has been rewarded for abusing me and neglecting me. But also, my mother's been complicit in all this too, rewarded by the federal government and various secret societies. It's very dark. Um, so I have two older sisters. One's 7 years older. The other's just shy of 2 years older. Um, and they're half sisters that I've come to embrace and realize. They've turned on me as well too. They've run with my parents' narcissistic narrative of me being a bad person and me being the problem in the family.
That's so playbook. I feel like so many of these, what I guess society look at or what these families label as like the black sheeps, they're the ones who are trying to break the trauma and they get ostracized for it. And everybody else who doesn't want to and who wants to just contain those family secrets and not heal from it,
Yep.
they completely ostracize the person who's trying to get it, trying to help heal the family basically and trying to help heal themselves. It's really sad.
Yeah. My entire life, I've just kind of felt cursed in a way, but also blessed at the same time. It's really hard to explain. But then my life just turned very. We'll get into that later. But let's go back to my parents and my childhood. So they were living in Chicago. My dad worked for Amoco, which was formerly Standard Oil of Indiana, where they were living, I believe, in Schaumburg, Illinois, just west of Chicago. It's a suburb. And but my dad had great issues with the way Amoco was run, that he reflects and tells me, and that the people running Amoco, the likely Rockefellers, that they were very inept, the people behind the scenes, and that it was very frustrating for him. And this is why he justifies. Well, first of all, to backtrack, I don't know. It was before he took the position with Amoco, he interviewed with the CIA. Yeah, and Amoco and many corporations likely are CIA fronts, and how they pay for much of the, and a lot of illicit drugs and stuff. The market is funded or funneled through CIA, and they profit off of much of this. Yeah, so the CIA profits, quite literally profits off of dysfunction and abuse and trauma. And so they perpetuate it. So my dad left Amoco under the grounds of poor management and took a position in Tripoli, Libya, in North Africa, while my mom was pregnant with me. And with two young children, a 7-year-old and just shy of two, a little older than one, I guess. She was at the time, 6-year-old and two daughters. And a pregnant woman. And I was born in Tripoli, Libya, at the oil company clinic with a small time operation. My dad tells stories about this. This was a time where nobody had telephones in their home. Electricity was in and out. There was no television. People would have like old school movie projectors and watch like Disney films, and everybody would congregate together, all the expatriate community largely from North America and Canada, United States, and Great Britain and such. And they would booze was illegal, and so they would brew like their own beer and stuff. And I guess it was a real tight-knit group. And we lived there until I was the age of 3. I was a very sick baby. And when I allegedly was prescribed a strong old school antibiotic course, and I was allegedly my entire body was covered in some sort of rash, a thick rash, and nobody could help me in Libya. And so, well, Well, let's actually backtrack. There's something very critical that I forgot to mention. I wasn't supposed to be born. My mother had an abortion planned, and likely because it was I was procreated out of wedlock. It was I was the bastard child or whatever that saying is. You know. But she backed out the day before the abortion, and everything in my intuition and my soul tells me that she backed out because the government talked her to backing out to sell me into the government, have me be born in another country, issued a birth certificate from the United States Embassy where I am them government property, and they can do whatever they want to me covertly. So and I didn't find out about the scheduled abortion until I was 18 or 19 years old when my great aunt Ines was developing severe Alzheimer's, and she was, I guess, openly talking about it. And so she knew details, and as did my Aunt Kay, my mom's oldest sister, about this abortion, and they died very, very tragic deaths that were likely orchestrated to keep the family secrets quiet, you know? Um, it's diabolical. It's completely diabolical. I had this rash, and it was Christmas time, 1974, going on to 1975. I was 5 months old or so, and we went back, I guess, to Chicago. And the story that I was told as a child, as a teenager and such, is that my mom went to doctor after doctor on the north side of Chicago, on the North Shore of Chicago, which is the affluent white area, and no doctor would treat me or help me. Like, who doesn't want to help a 5-year-old baby? It's a 5-month-old baby. It's like awful. And that she had to go to the south side of Chicago and see a Black African American doctor in order for me to get help, because everybody else was too, I guess, afraid to treat me because they likely knew that I was in some sort of government MK Ultra program, that I was born into this.
And speaking of being born too, one of the things I thought was fascinating was the date that you think that you were born versus the hypothetical date
Yeah.
that your
Yeah.
mother couldn't even remember.
Yeah, that's another critical detail. I was born July 8th, 1974, officially. My mother remembers or has never once talked about her pregnancy with me. She talks nothing about the birthing. And I know I was in the hospital for the oil company clinic for a couple of days before I was brought home. And my oldest sister, who's 7 years older, when she brought it back, she was like, "My God, look at his toes and stuff and his feet," because they were all smushed and curled over and stuff, likely suggesting a tight womb, which my intuition tells me that I had a twin or something. I don't know. These are all things that I would like to know. Um, and I'm also neurodivergent. I have what's used to be known as Asperger's, which is high functioning autism. Of course, I've never been able to get that and many other appropriate conditions properly diagnosed. And instead, things have been scapegoated as other things, my problems, and I've been blamed for having chronic illnesses and being neurodivergent my entire life. Anyways, it's but yeah, I was officially born on July 8th, 1974, but I believe I was born on July 7th. Now, that would break down to 7774. And it's, with the 666 and the 7774, I'm just like, I don't know. But I pay attention to numbers because I'm Asperger's, And I've found great meaning and reassurances through numbers in my life, and I don't believe in coincidences anymore. So much of my life has been orchestrated to for me to be neglected and not receive love, and to shut down any of my talents. It's actually remarkable I've accomplished what I have accomplished in life as I reflect on my life. But Yeah. But while we were living in Tripoli, Libya, for through the age of 3, my parents would go to Europe a couple times a year to vacation, and they would drop us off, my sisters and I, at what were called Kinderheims in Switzerland. Now, Kinderheims are a very, very dark part of Swiss history. Um, they were orphanages run by nuns and the Catholic community, where they were very, very abusive to children and treated. My oldest sister was basically slave labor from 7 to 10 when she was there. And I have no memory of what happened to me in that place, but I'm sure there were rituals and ceremonies done, and maybe, I don't know, abuse. I can tell you that when anybody talks about sexual abuse and stuff, that I have a real visceral shutdown response, and that it hits home very personally with me. But I have no memory of any sexual abuse. I don't know.
Do you have missing time from those periods too, where you have blocks of time that you don't remember?
My first memories aren't until I was about 5 or so in kindergarten, once we moved back to Chicago.
Okay.
And so it's that it's yeah, these Kinderheims are very notorious, and there have been a lot of legal settlements within Switzerland to abuse victims, Swiss abuse victims. And so why were American expatriates living in Libya dropping their kids off in an orphanage saying, "Oh, this is just great. It's Switzerland, like land of just like nothing but goodness," in their eyes, being, you know, um, being treated by Catholic nuns. Now, my oldest sister was separated always. She was not allowed to see me or my other sister. No, she's like, "I just want to see my brother and sister." No. And she was hit with rulers and abused and like really awful stuff. And I can only imagine what happened to myself and my other sister while we were there. Um, I'll likely never know those details, but it's very, very dark, very dark. And so my parents would, run a car or whatever and go travel Western Europe and have a gay old time while their children were being abused. And that's yeah.
And their father was the man that you thought was your father, correct?
Right,
Their
right,
father.
correct. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah. And my mother likely had an affair, or I don't know if it was just a fling, but she was never happy. She was not happy with the marriage. She was not happy of being. She always felt like her early adulthood was stripped from her. Her career was stripped from her. My bloodline's likely been targeted from my great grandmother Millie to my cousin. I don't want to say her first name. And to me, I don't know. It's wild. I'm kind of lost in thought right there where I was going with that, but I don't know. Can you help me get back on track?
Yeah. We were just talking about going from your birth into some of your, early memories. And we had gotten to age 5, and that was probably my fault for backtracking. I was asking
No.
about your birth and things like that, but you were talking about how some of your first memories came at age 5,
Yeah,
and talking about that time period.
yeah. Well, my mom's family grew up Presbyterian, and my dad's family grew up Methodist. And we, at the age of 3, we moved to the North Shore of Chicago. We moved to Highland Park. And then from there, we moved to Winnetka, Illinois. I have no memories of Highland Park either. My first memories are in Winnetka. There were things like I remember getting baptized at Winnetka Presbyterian. Um, my mom alleges she wanted to do it when I was old enough to remember it. The middle sister, the one closest in age to me, and I were baptized the same day. I remember watching crazy movies like The Exorcist and Old Yeller and how those just had profound impacts on me. Like I was just in tears from Old Yeller and it just like scarred me. And like it's like, I don't know. I remember a crazy snowstorm in like 1979 or something where that hit the Chicago area and we had like snow tunnels that were like igloos and connected and it was wild and I remember a tetherball court in the backyard and this was a very, very affluent, wealthy neighborhood where it was almost like I was born into a life of privilege. But there was just all this covert hidden abuse and coordinated abuse, both in the school systems and at home and at church environments. Um, and so I also remember one of my most vivid memories is when I was about 5 years old. And I really wanted these crayons that you could draw on a t-shirt, like a white t-shirt, and then it could wash and it would stay, right? And I really wanted these crayons, and my mom refused to buy them for me, even though it's well within her budget and stuff. And she just was very always denying me of things. And so, being my 5-year-old self, I was like, well, I really want these, so I just took them. And I took them. I went down to the basement of our home in Winnetka, and I grabbed a t-shirt and I guess I was just going crazy with the crayons on this. And my mom comes down and she catches me and she's just like, wow. She's just like pissed. My mom has serious rage issues, serious rage issues. And she's got it more controlled now, but until I was graduated high school, she was out of control rager. Um, Often in public too. But she stormed me back down to the store, and I remember there being two women. I don't know if they were the owners or shopkeepers or or what, but I remember just being in tears, like I'm sorry, I just wanted to do something beautiful and create, and and the two women thought it was like, as I reflect, thought it was the most adorable thing, and they're just like, and felt so bad for me, and just like, what a cute kid, like it's okay, kid, But that was one of the early life lessons that I learned, hard life lessons, is that and even if you're trying to do something really beautiful, it's not cool to steal, you know. Um, there are other lessons, lessons that my mom's sort of crafted. She's always speaks to me like I'm not there in the room and stuff. She's always say things like, I've always said that if I ever had a son, he would grow up to be respectful of women and treat them right and stuff, like I'm not even there. And I'm nothing but a loving, respectful person. And I've never been emotionally, psychologically abusive to anybody, and it's and I just and of course she ignores these qualities about me. She was also very anti-war and anti-guns, and so I was never allowed to have toy guns as a boy. So I used to always have to play with my friends' guns and stuff when I'd go to their houses and things. But that also instilled in me that sort of this pacifist kind of thing that violence isn't the answer to our solutions. And I created this really emotional TikTok. I called it the most important social media message I've ever done. Given this was this past summer in Tucson, Arizona. I'm currently in Texas, and it was pure raw from the heart. I don't know where it is because that account was shut down. But I made it specifically for my mother because they've been after me. Let's just say there's been a target on my back, let's say, largely to keep the narrative going that they're great people and they have no faults and everything's my fault. And so I did that as an appeal to her heart and her conscience, if there's any left in her. But she's a very, very cold, dark person who dealt with and she was largely targeted in her life And I don't think there's any leaving the targeted individual program. And it's just a question of how intense your targeting is. And I believe that my dad has been her handler, was my handler multiple times. I've had tons of different handlers throughout my life, be it roommates or lovers or anything, that were planted or paid to betray me and do me great abuse, psychologically mostly. But my mother dealt with horrible, like I said, the rage, and then she was bedridden with depression when I started. Must have started. We moved from Winnetka. We moved to Houston, Texas, because when my dad, after we left Libya, he ended up taking a job back with Amoco, Standard Oil of Indiana, under the Rockefellers, which he left because he said they were so poorly run, because it was all set up. It's all lies. And I believe everything was done to get me be born outside of the country so the government would have more control over me. Anyways, they moved, Amoco moved their operations from, or at least their international operations, a lot of their operations, from the Chicago area to Houston, Texas. So I moved there in second grade in 1981, where we lived out into the suburbs. And then in sixth grade, we moved by Memorial Park inside by the 610 Loop. And yeah, but my mother developed really crippling bedridden depression, and I had to watch it, and I was such an empath, and I had not experienced depression at this point in my life. But I could feel her pain. I could literally, and I was trying to help her and heal her, and I've always been an empath and a nurturer. Um, I'm very sensitive to people's energies and people's pain and people's trauma and people's hurt. Very sensitive. It's a lot of times it's just very difficult for me to be out in public with everybody's energies and things. But yeah, and she attempted suicide once. My sister was a star soccer player. She was the captain of the varsity team at our school, and she attempted suicide in one of their tournaments. And I don't know. It's just it's very dark. She's always been very sensitive to noises and like gum chewing, things like that, which suggest targeting, that you have this acclimated things to auditory stimuli and things. And that depression often comes along with targeting, because you can intentionally make people depressed by giving them lab-grown pathogens and denying that the pathogenic cause of the depression. But she was oblivious to all of this, and now, no, I don't want to jump too far ahead right now.
Was there anything bizarre with their births, kind of how yours was?
I,
Was there any...
I have no idea. There's so many family secrets, and I'm the youngest out of all my cousins and everybody, second cousins, everybody. I'm the baby, and of the Gen X generation, or I guess a couple of them are technically boomers. Um, but I don't know. We just don't talk about those things. We talk about, actually. It's anything to keep the charade up that everything is just a happy home, and and while my mother was bedridden with depression and raging, I remember one time I was in theater in high school, and I lived right across the street from my high school, and I had a weekend play practice. I forget what play we were doing. It was on a Saturday. And I asked my mother for some money so I could get some snacks and things. And she said no, and we got in this huge fight. And rather than walking out the front door and going to play practice, I lived on the second floor, and I just jumped off my balcony. I did this a lot. I acted out a lot in high school. and I would just jump down, and so I wouldn't have to deal with anybody or whatever. Or on the weekends, I would sneak out so I could be with my friends because they were very, very strict. My family ran with a very tight fist, very authoritarian, my way or the highway. So in order for me to live and have some space, I always had to sort of do things in the shadows. Anyways, I did not want to deal with my mother and walk out of my bedroom and get attacked even more. And so I jumped off the balcony and went to school and went to theater practice. And she found out and she was pissed and she came on the warpath and just came screaming. And I was off like practicing lines somewhere in some remote area of the theater. And I guess she came up to the director, Mr. Marshall, Mr. Bob Marshall. And it's just like, what? It's just like, and everybody's like, oh my God, they'd never seen such rage, not from a woman, definitely, at such intensity. And for me, it was just another day. And um, so she came and she chewed me out, and where I was practicing my lines and things. About a half hour later, Mr. Marshall walks by, the director, and Bob Marshall, great man. Um, that he's passed, but anyways, he's like, wow, Greg, are you okay? I was like, yeah, whatever. It's fine. I'm good. He's like, are you really, really okay? Are you sure? I was like, yeah, dude, really? Yeah, I'm fine. It's just like another day for me. And this was my mom's rage became so intense that it had no bounds anymore. But she still, when she could control it, she would still put on this facade that we just had this happy home and that everything was wonderful and that she wasn't dealing with her demons and her trauma and had no idea how to deal with it. And that anyways, I would be sitting there and I would get raged at, and then she would just be asleep in the daytime all day, lying in bed, and it's just this pitch black bedroom in her pitch black bedroom, and I could just feel her pain. And then the doorbell would ring, and it would be some amical wife or something, and she would just put on this happy face, like, ah! They would sit there at the front door and just talk about, gossip and this and that for like 5 minutes, just like, completely putting on an act that everything's wonderful. There are no problems here. And I watched that and I was just like, wow, wow. It's like, why if you can do that, why don't you ever do that for me? Why don't you? I've been denied love. I've had anytime any sort of pets, we've had rescue pets and stuff throughout my childhood, and they've all been stripped after like a week of us rescuing them. It's all been done intentionally to deny me of any love because I've quickly connected with these animals. It's all part of the MK Ultra program to invalidate me and to deny me of love. It's so sadistic that I don't know if people can believe that, but it's true. Anyways, this I wouldn't. Well, first I moved to Houston in the second grade in 1981. Went to a public school, Foster Elementary in Kingwood, Texas. And then they told my mother that I wasn't smart and that I was basically the dumb kid of the class and that I had no future and no hope. Well, that really pissed her off. My older sister, Allison, the middle sister, she was held back, I believe it was in second grade, because she was slow to pick on, likely due to trauma. And so she was held back a grade. So she was only one grade ahead of me. And I viewed her and she's 5'3", I'm 6'3". So when we were children, we were like the same height and everybody thought we were twins, and that really irritated her. But so she ended up going to a Montessori school first. Because of her, my parents were so outraged at the treatment she was getting by the Texas public school system. And then starting in fourth grade, I did second and third grade at Foster, and then fourth and fifth grade at the Pines Montessori School. And this was the first time I was able ever to shine. to show my genius. Well, that's not necessarily true. To academically do that. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I guess I don't remember this, but my mom recalls it. And there would be puzzles, jigsaw puzzles for ages like 10 plus, and I'd be like, "Mommy, I want that." It's above you. Don't worry about it. And I kept on bugging her till eventually she started buying me these puzzles, and I would complete them. Way before than I should have been able to, right? So I've just always had this unique pattern recognition, and I also have that way with numbers I told you about. Anyways, so at the Pines Montessori, it's a fantastic, like, hands off, where you just let the child learn and you provide them all these great resources where they can learn things on their own. I was doing advanced computer coding on an Apple IIe, and I was doing advanced algebra. Like, I just blew away all the other students. And I was obsessed with, like, geography, and I was like in a whole nother stratosphere. Well, that really bothered my dad because I'm not his biological son, and he was being paid to keep me down. I've dealt with intentional illnesses my entire childhood and my entire adult life that have been projected on me. Multiple parasitic infections that have been denied because you can cultivate these pathogens in a lab and make somebody sick, which is completely diabolical. And I don't think people can really wrap their heads around it. But if you want to go back for a precedent, there was, when Americas were being colonized, the Europeans, be it the British or the Spanish or Americans even later, would give infected blankets with smallpox and stuff to the indigenous populations to make them sick and kill them. Completely diabolical. Well, that stuff is still happening in 2025, guys, but not with smallpox. Anyways, and also interestingly, when we moved to Kingwood, Texas, I developed this, like, mole behind my left elbow, that very large and stuff. I believe that was part of the MK Ultra program. That it wasn't a mole; it was something planted on me when I was in my sleep, and likely put under anesthesia to be experimented on and stuff. It was interestingly this past summer, after I started sharing my story on social media and stuff, while I was in Tucson, I went to bed one night. First, I went to a bar and had a beer or two, and then came home to my humble apartment, which is a whole nother story. But anyways, I had intense, crazy hypersomnia, and I just passed out, and I slept like 18 hours or something. But when I woke up, I noticed this mole was missing. It was gone. I had it from second grade to almost age 50. Gone. Now, I think this is people that are privy to what's been happening to me after I've been sharing my story publicly, that are trying to help me, but are afraid to because of the dark forces in charge. It's likely a tracking device. It was likely an old school tracking device, and with 1980s technology, got military grade probably. Yeah, I don't know what all this mole represented, but I know it's epically huge. Epically huge. I would have girlfriends and stuff that are like, you should get that checked out. Every single dermatologist I ever said, oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. I've never been able to get help from the medical community. Be it psychiatry, dermatology, urology, neurology, sleep specialists. No. Doctors have just accelerated my demise. And I've been a lab rat my entire life by modern medicine. And a lot of this I've pieced together since I had my full awakening to all of this, that my life has been orchestrated back around October of 2023. And so I've been basically piecing together all of my past, and I have a remarkable recall of my life in great detail, despite all the gaslighting, despite all the narrative forcing. And anyways, it's been a long road. And so yeah, I've always had that. Interestingly, I
What
was a
other,
very active.
I
Yeah,
want to
go ahead.
ask you, do you know of any other secret society ties in your family lineage aside from the father slash not father who
Hmm.
was clearly involved?
Well, there was my grandfather Garber, who was a member of the Scottish Rite. So
That's right. Okay.
he was Masonic. I believe he was only like sixth or seventh degree. I don't know. I don't know. My mom takes great pride in that. My mom's like the Eastern Star,
Oh,
um, and very tons of Freemasons and Eastern Star people have been planted into my life intentionally. And then these people have been rewarded for abusing me and fed lies about me, about who I am. That's the family narcissistic narrative that I'm the bad person, I'm the issue with the family. And so they feel justified to abuse me because they believe my dad, because he's a high-ranking member in the secret society, likely affiliated with the New World Order and with Rockefeller ties, and who's been rewarded throughout his career and through secret societies for his abuse of me, his keeping me down and stuffing my spiritual side. I was abused in church groups, psychologically. I've always been dealing with infections that have been denied, that have been crippling, that have impacted my cognitive abilities. They've impacted my physical abilities. It's been a long road. But I've overcome much of this now. But we'll get into that probably in a second podcast or something. Anyways, yeah, and so when we moved from one side of Houston to the other, when I was in sixth grade, I went to Audi International School, which was a half French school where they had a completely French curriculum and then they had a completely American curriculum. And it was a small school. It was only about 20 students in each class. It was K through 12. Um, and that was a big Freemasonry thing too. And I was likely being subjected to direct energy weapons all the way back then. My dad did not like that I was excelling at the Montessori school and that I was blowing away my peers in all areas that I could excel at. Did not like that. And so I went back and I was doing remarkable things in fourth and fifth grade, especially fifth grade, once I found my stride. And then I went to the traditional classrooms where I was likely being hit with direct energy weapons, had multiple parasitic infections that were denied, and horrible crippling brain fog. And I was a D student, like D, like straight D's, like bad, bad, bad. And then that's where the narrative got spun that, oh, this is always Greg's fault. That Greg's just lazy and unmotivated, and Greg's this, Greg's that. And always like testing me for problems and things. But interestingly, I would take like aptitude tests, like I forget what those middle school tests were called, that the aptitude tests that they would give in the United States. I don't know if they still give them, where they would sort of rank you on a percentile where you are in like math and English and things. And I would rank in like the 99th percentile, but I was a straight D student. I was excelled in those. So, and then I would have to go for neuropsychological testing and stuff to find out what's wrong with Greg, because that's been the narrative. What's wrong with Greg? Let's figure out what's wrong with Greg, when nobody actually wants to find out what's wrong with Greg or provide him any effective solutions or ways for him to cope. And so I've had to learn everything on my own. Anyways, so my IQ, if I were to take the IQ test, I think it would fluctuate at least 2 standard deviations depending on my cognitive impairments from direct energy weapons and parasitizations. That's a huge range. I mean, that's like going from, I don't know what my true IQ is, but when I was in middle school, I think it was like 107 or 108 or something, and that just didn't seem right. And I can tell you that I'm at least in the 130 range, if not more. And it's just everything's been Anyways, I was bullied at Audi International and things, and I just I've always been different, but in Kingwood, I had lots of friends and stuff. I was very social, but everything's been sort of orchestrated to psychologically abuse me, be it the teachers or the administrative staff at the schools, or doctors or therapists or people at the church. And I would get hit with these horrible brain fog and cognitive difficulties when I would go to church, Sunday school and stuff. And I wouldn't take in much. I'd be there, but I couldn't really connect with the biblical messages, which was tragic, and I firmly believe was orchestrated and intentional. Another part of the narrative that spun out of control was when we were coming back from church when I was in second or third grade in the summertime, and we had to do yard work and things, right? And so I'm sitting there in the back seat with my sisters coming back from church. We're all dressed up, and I remember having this sharp piercing pain in my thumb, and I'm just like, "What the hell was that?" And I was like, "Ow!" You know, it really hurt out of nowhere. You look, nothing's there. I've kind of figured out what that is now, and who orchestrated it. Anyways, parasites are very visually elusive organism, helminths, which are parasitic worms. And I've proven this. I've documented this recently in my adult life over the past few years. I have tons of documentation of transparent, translucent, invisible worms that are really real. But you can only identify them visually in water with the right magnification and right lighting, or visually. Or you can identify them tactilely, but not visually, by touch. Or you could put them in like hydrogen peroxide, and hydrogen peroxide eats away at their cellular bodies and makes them more visual, easy to identify visually. But anyways, I want to get into that later, how you can intentionally parasitize people. But that was a parasitic worm that was biting the tip of my thumb. Now I've been getting these bites in this strange biofilm all over my skin my entire life that doctors have denied, and acne and all these other problems that all have parasitic etiologies. And so my dad was like, "Hey, we got to go do yard work." And I'm just sitting there back there looking at my thumb like, "What's going on?" I was like, "But my thumb hurts." And so it became the family narrative that, oh, Greg doesn't want to do yard work because his thumb has imaginary pain. Like in that he's lazy and unmotivated and always looking for excuses to get out of things, where the complete opposite's true. I have incredible work ethic. So ironically, I've been deemed as like a parasite of society because my career, my education, everything's been sabotaged consistently for me to fail. And so I've recently, over the past few years, I've been on like Medicaid and food stamps and things, and deemed a parasite of society. And this is going on a mass scale with especially young men today that are living in their parents' basement playing Xbox or whatever because they're sick. They're dealing with infections, legitimate infections that the medical community denies. And masculinity is unfairly under attack today. And it's disgusting. And I was trailblazer on that, right? The model that they use that was effective with me is being mass applied to Gen Z.
And I want to say too, real quick, your story really corroborates a lot of other survivors and people who have gone through similar things that you did as children. Seems like there's one extreme or another that they push kids into. They either really push them into being a gifted and talented kid, and they excel in everything, even in a way that's not authentic sometimes. I've heard of people being able to graduate or get college scholarships without even having to earn it. So it seems like there's either that direction, or there's also been a lot of people that I've had on my show where it was the opposite. They were made to look like an outcast. They were made to look like they couldn't excel anytime they shined or were given an opportunity to shine, or anytime they excelled. something happened, whether it was let's switch schools real quick, or let's take you out of that class, or let's do this. Something always happened to sabotage that. That way the person always stayed small. So their genius was almost never
Yeah.
discovered. That way
Yeah.
it gives the family control over you. If you don't get to excel and choose where you want to go and have the world open for you, if all your opportunities are taken away, then they get to push you where they want you to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I believe through for various occult satanic practices, they are able to harness our energy for their benefits. And so not only are they dark tetrad psychopathic narcissists, they're also working with the occult and the CIA to keep me down. It's like it's so evil. It's beyond comprehensible for those who aren't awakened. It's beyond comprehensible. But yeah, it's
It is.
wild,
It's
and
like they deny you your
that's why I need to share my story. That dude, we need to empower young men today because masculinity, this whole woke movement, is just awful, and how everything's white male fault. No, it's not the kid's fault, and there's zero toxic about my masculinity, but that wasn't the narrative being pushed on by my sister, the middle one, and other people. And my sister likely was an MK Ultra experiment in creating wokeism because in the late 80s, early 90s, she had that toxic feminist perspective where everything masculine was evil, the patriarchy, blah blah blah, and she just was taught to hate me with disdain. And she's Eastern Star for sure, without a doubt. Um, and we don't speak. I don't speak with any of my family anymore. I've recently cut them all off since I left Tucson and came to Texas for my own safety and for my own well-being. Anyways, it's to give a little context. I didn't go to your average high school. And just as I was going into eighth grade, I was going to transfer from Audi International School to St. John's, from one private school to another in the Houston area. I did summer school at St. John's, and to catch up to their curriculum and such, because I was doing so poorly at Audi. But again, that was likely another Masonic school setup. But then we received 2 weeks' notice to my dad received a position in Cairo, Egypt. And and we had 2 weeks' notice to pack up and move to Egypt. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, but it was also it's interesting. It gave me a really unique perspective on life. It flipped all my world upside down and things. But interestingly, a little known fact is that I don't know if this is still true today, but it was definitely true in the 80s and 90s that the largest American embassy in the world is located in Cairo. And that's largely due to them making peace with Israel and all the USAID infrastructure and all the foreign the government investment that we do in Egypt for their infrastructure and to promote health and stuff and well-being. But everything indicates to me that USAID, USAID is really a CIA front. And my school, I lived right across the street, like I said earlier, from my high school, eighth grade. It was a K through 12 school. It was an American school. It's called Cairo American College. That it was an American curriculum with mostly American teachers, but it was a very diverse group from Canada, Europe, Middle East. It was a diverse group, but it was mostly American teachers and it's an American curriculum. And it was largely funded by two groups. One was the United States Embassy, and the other was Amoco, Standard Oil of Indiana. So we have likely CIA money funding this school that is, or was, at least was known as the most prestigious school to go to in Egypt if you wanted to go to university in another country. It was only about 500 students in the high school. And it was an amazing school, amazing resources, and amazing education. But at the same time, it was likely a big CIA operative as well, where they push and craft certain narratives. They mold certain children to become world leaders. Like in my school, I went to school with a lot of children of very prestigious children, either be it on the diplomatic fronts or economic fronts from various countries. The student body was probably about 50% American. It was a very international. We probably had about, I don't know, 60 nationalities in the high school out of the 500 kids. Um, but it was mostly Americans and Egyptians, or Egyptians/Americans, where they had one parent of each. Um, and yeah, it was um, yeah, it's everything again was done. I've never been a good traditional classroom learner, and I really struggled until my senior year, actually. I started having much more success, and I was always grounded. And an interesting thing about living in other countries, especially developing countries, is they got mass concerns, right? Societally, with poverty and all these other issues, right? That last thing they're going to be worried about is expatriate kids living in their country, drinking and smoking cigarettes and things, right? It's like the farthest thing. So we had free reign of to go to the bars, the nightclubs, or take a felucca, which was a sailboat on the Nile, and just take booze with us and drink and party on the weekends, or we could always buy a pack of Marlboros, or Cleopatra's was the Egyptian kind, but those were when I moved to Egypt in 1987, there were it was not the global market had not taken its place, and American capitalism had not completely penetrated the country. The only foreign products there were basically Marlboros and Pepsi products, beverages, Pepsi, Diet Pepsi, Miranda, and something like Sprite. I forget what it was called. And um, but by the time I graduated high school, we had like Pizza Hut and all this other crazy Cheetos, and like just like it was wild to watch this change. This is all pre-internet. We didn't have we didn't have satellite TV. We the only When I moved there in 1987, there was one Arabic channel they would play an American TV show, be it like Dynasty, or later on they really loved MacGyver, the Egyptian people. So it'd be in subtitles, but it was really poor quality and stuff. But all the Egyptians ate it up and loved it. But we didn't watch TV. But we would, like, it was the big VHS era, right? And so we would rent. People would obviously go back to Europe or the States, and they'd bring VHS back, and we just binge watch movies all the time and stuff. And that's how we sort of and getting music back too, and with cassette tapes and stuff, and that's how we sort of there's a thing called third culture kids, and there are people that were of a certain nationality but are raised in other countries, and so while they don't have the culture of the country that they're in, they do have qualities of it, but they also have the qualities of their home country. And so it's like this third culture, and it was like this big melting pot of all these really fascinating people. But it was also unbeknownst to the student body, it was this big Freemasonry or CIA like thing going on, where they were basically programming a lot of us to take on various roles in the future, or to not, or to be subjected to great harm, like I have been.
Egypt is a big location too for the occult. It's very,
Exactly.
yeah.
And guess where the high school graduation is for Cairo American College every year, in front of the Sphinx and the pyramids. And do you realize that graduation ceremonies, the cap and gown, are big Freemasonry symbols? It's all a Freemasonry process, graduation and things. And that this was all done in front of the pyramids and the Sphinx every year. My grandfather, Garber, he was still alive, and he made it all the way from Ohio for my high school graduation, which really touched my heart. Interestingly, my dad took a position with the school board uh, allegedly because he wanted to be able to help protect me. Or no, he was orchestrating my demise and my abuse because now he had direct influence over all the teachers and administrators, control of the influence over the hiring process, over the curriculum, everything. And he was very nurturing to my sisters. My sister Allison, who I already mentioned, was the soccer star and stuff. You know, when we lived in Houston, he would spend all weekend driving her around to soccer tournaments and soccer practices and all these other things. And where he was always orchestrating my demise. It's really sadistic. Um, so yeah, he was able to give me my high school diploma on stage because he was a member of the school board rather than the principal giving it to me. And interestingly, our keynote speaker was the foreign minister of Egypt because his son was in my graduating class. Amr Musa was the name of him. He was also secretary for the United Nations for Egypt prior to that. And so his son went to the UN school in New York and then moved back to Cairo, and his dad took the position under then President Hosni Mubarak as the foreign minister of Egypt, which is this equivalent of Secretary of State. So it was a very, very, very we had a lot of ambassadors' children and very, children of pharmaceutical executives and oil executives. My dad was, when I was in high school, was the vice president of Amoco Egypt. And then his career really took off after that. Yeah. We can get into more of that later if it's necessary. He's a big part of orchestrating the rise of Azerbaijan after the collapse of the Soviet Union and getting their oil reserves out of the country and into Europe. He was a critical part of getting that pipeline built, which was a challenge with their issues with Armenia and their territory dispute with Nagorno-Karabakh, which they've recently settled. And so they had to go up through like Georgia and into Turkey and stuff with this pipeline in order to get this oil to Europe. And when I first went to Baku, Azerbaijan, when I was going to college in Boston University. This was I don't know, maybe 1993 or something, 1994. I don't know. I can't remember. This was still very Soviet. All of the business there in Azerbaijan was conducted in Russian, although the locals spoke Azerbaijani at home and stuff. And that the Russians did not invest any money into that country. So this country has gone under tremendous economic reforms and growth and stuff, largely because of this pipeline. And my dad was a critical part of that. The then president Aliyev, and now his son is president, another Aliyev. Well, after my dad retired and was living in Santa Fe, New Mexico, they commissioned him as an honorary diplomat for the country of Azerbaijan, and he has lobbied on their behalf with politicians. He was the honorary consul for the state of Azerbaijan in the state of the country of Azerbaijan for the state of New Mexico. I don't know how much weight that carries, but still, he would basically lobby politicians both in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is the state capital, and in DC on behalf of Azerbaijan for their economic development and things. But yeah. Much of my dad's career success has been, I think not only has he been feeding off of my energy and my intelligence and stuff, and that whenever I've shined, he's shut me down and I've gotten horrible chronic infections. But he's been rewarded for orchestrating all of this. But then I think he's because he had a much different background from anybody else who worked in the oil and gas industry. They were either engineers or geologists, all these high-powered people in the oil and gas industry. And my dad had his master's degree from in economics from Bowling Green University in Ohio, whereas all these other people went to like Ivy League schools or like it just or like UT or A&M and things because it's many of them were Texas based. And so he was just sort of like the odd duck and like how he climbed this upper managerial thing is very curious, given his background and stuff. But he started out as like he was largely like an international negotiator when I was in when we were in Chicago and stuff, and he would fly to all these developing countries to develop oil to do oil negotiations for Amoco to drill and export oil in these nations or sell them locally within their countries. So anywhere from Trinidad and Tobago to tons of different African countries or the United Arab Emirates or yeah. So without a doubt, I think the CIA orchestrated my dad taking that position in Cairo as the vice president of Amoco Egypt. And so he was very, very respected businessman in that community. And as I look back, most of his colleagues were Masonic, and many of his friends were as well, executives for like Pfizer and things like that, Pfizer Pharmaceuticals, and many of the administrative staff of Cairo American College. Yeah, it's interesting because I was really, really well liked in high school, really well liked. I got along with pretty much everybody, but the only people I really had issues with were the embassy kids, which I found really interesting. And I remember one time I was a junior or senior in high school, and our lockers were outside because we didn't get much rain and we just had an overhang to cover it. I was sitting there at my locker, and this girl was a couple years younger than me, an embassy child, comes up to me and she's like, "Greg, can I ask you a question?" I'd never talked to her before, ever. I was like, "Sure, yeah, what's up?" She's like, "Are you a bird watcher?" It's like, "What?" She's like, "You look like a bird watcher," and then does like a 180 and just walks away like strutting. And I was like, what a strange interaction. What a strange interaction. Well, the reason why this has significance is because now, later in life, now that my parapsychosis has escalated, or not right now, but it could later tonight. Well, what do birds eat? Worms, right? So, yeah, I've developed a unique relationship with birds because, well, you can't see them visually in within your environment. Well, the birds can. The birds can sense them, you know, and so it all adds up. That this I was I dealt with horrible acne and horrible skin issues. Interestingly, I spent most of my time in theater. I was going to say that. Well, I was really, really active in elementary school. I'd run and bike and swim all day and night. I was in basketball and baseball and all these things, right? Always playing with my friends. And but in sixth grade, when we moved inside the loop in Houston, I tried out for cross country running, and I couldn't run half a mile without passing out. I was 11 years old. Why can't an 11-year-old boy run half a mile? That suggests an infection, people. That this is chronic fatigue, post-exertional malaise. And so chronic fatigue has a parasitic etiology, ME/CFS, as do a lot of chronic conditions. And these are things that I have learned since my awakening. Well, actually starting before I became awake, and then I realized everything's orchestrated, and that many chronic illnesses have pathogenic causes that modern medicine denies, and it's completely evil, that there are millions of people suffering needlessly. And this 70% of Americans today have at least one chronic illness, adults. 70%. So this is impacting everybody, either directly or indirectly, through themselves or one of their loved ones. It's disgusting.
And that's
And it's
probably
all
just
been orchestrated
reported.
because there's insane profit in denying the pathogenic cause of these conditions. So then you can just treat the symptoms and then treat the side effects from the treatments that weren't necessary in the first place. And it's just pile on more medications and more medications. So if you don't think you're being impacted by this, check your medicine cabinet or check your family, your loved one's medicine cabinet, because you are. This has all been orchestrated. Much of these illnesses are unnecessary, anywhere from, I broke this all down in my restless leg video on YouTube under the handle subjectively dash. No, I'm sorry. This is under the handle Matchbox Sign 39, which I recorded this past Easter in the Chicago area. I was traveling the country because I was under extreme targeting because they didn't want any of this information out. That I connected the dots. That various mental illness, it's not just chronic illness, it's also mental illnesses. A lot of depression has a pathogenic biological cause, bipolar, schizophrenia. So it's restless leg syndrome, that one. It's 35 minutes long. And I break down all the science and the history of it, and that this I connect it with depression, anxiety, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, tons of just conditions, right? That are much maligned. They're all stigmatized. The patient's often blamed rather than the medical system being at fault for not getting better with these conditions. Parkinson's. These all have parasitic etiologies, guys. All of them. This right there, that's groundbreaking. And so I break it down to there was a Swedish neurologist in the World War II era called Carl Axel Ekbom, whose name was affiliated with restless leg syndrome, used to be called Willis-Ekbom disorder or disease. And so Willis, Sir Thomas Willis, was a British person who first started noticing the signs of restless leg syndrome back in the 1600s, in the 17th century in Britain. But then Ekbom pioneered it as a neurologically based condition in the World War II era, and just after World War II in 1946 in Sweden. Now, interestingly, and restless leg syndrome can be associated with creepy crawly sensations on the legs. But you don't see anything there, right? Huh. Well, guess what other condition he was his name is associated with? Well, Ekbom syndrome is another name for delusional parasitosis, which also comes with creepy crawly sensations on the skin that nothing is there visually. And he pioneered that in 1939, right near the start of World War II. It seems like an awfully big coincidence to me that he pioneered one as a psychiatric condition and one as a neurological condition with creepy crawly sensations on the skin. Well, if you want to relate this back to the military-industrial complex, you can connect the dots yourself. Because Nazi Germany at the time, the Nazis were notorious for taking what was called Pervitin, which was a pill form of the methamphetamine. Well, guess what these parasitic worms attack? Our dopamine systems. And what does methamphetamine do? It spikes up your dopamine. So this was a biological weapon used against Nazi Germany. Interestingly, I've connected other dots that also Asperger's, which I have, likely has a parasitic etiology as well. And that interesting Asperger, guess where he was and when he pioneered Asperger's? Austria, World War II. Do the dots starting to connect with you? This restless leg video is groundbreaking. It's picked a lot of my social media. While a lot of you probably won't see the accurate number of views, I know it's gone viral. I've had various podcasters and stuff with enormous followings reference my stuff and quote me on various times. But there, it's people. I haven't gotten the direct public acknowledgement for it yet, and this is groundbreaking. And I break down all the signs that these conditions have parasitic etiologies. I did that on Easter Sunday. When I went back to Winnetka. I was traveling the country fighting for my life. And I went back to Winnetka because I wanted to go back to my roots and try to remember my childhood from my early days of kindergarten and first grade. And then from there, I went to Ohio to go to my grandparents, where my dad and my mom grew up in Columbus Grove and Springfield. It's been a long road, and I'm lucky to be alive today. And I consider it only by the grace of God that I'm alive today. It's truly been by divine intervention, and you know, my extreme parasitosis started in 2019, just before the pandemic hit, and that's when my extreme targeting started as well. But I've been targeted my entire life. And but at first, when my symptoms started, I was like, oh, this is probably all in my head. Like I don't think this is real, you know, what's going on. So I just ignore it, which was the worst thing to do. But then things escalated, and then things weren't just in my scalp now. They were going up, down there, any orifice, ears, nostrils, mouth, everything, eyes. The scariest things you could ever imagine, having these worms crawling into you, and nobody wants to help you, and everybody denies it. And I was deemed with delusional parasitosis, which I've since debunked as a bullshit disorder, excuse my language. That it's all been fabricated. Much of psychiatry has been fabricated. And the dopamine and serotonin and hypotheses, they're junk. They're junk. And that most of these conditions have parasitic etiologies, or maybe even bacterial. And modern medicine has consistently denied pathogenic causes for conditions, anywhere from peptic ulcers to they've or you know, they blame people's mental acuity or their behaviors or their spirituality, be it from seizures to leprosy to, you know, what they did at the Tuskegee experiments with you know, people with syphilis, and they denied it. It's so diabolical. And all of us want to inherently believe that the medical system's there to help us. But no, a lot of us are being intentionally made sick, or we just contract these infections naturally that are denied because we have claimed for parasites, but we haven't. But we do. You can grow them in a lab and cultivate them in a lab and target a specific person or group of people with lab-grown parasites. And if you can't see them, how are you going to protect yourself? It's very challenging. And I've been on the ropes, and everything that I recorded starting on March 6th was my first YouTube, which was on the handle subjectively observed. And then I got locked out of that account, so I had to create a new one. And these were always, I thought, were going to be my last statements, because my targeting, my infections, everything was out of control. Out of control. The Bamboozled was the first one I did. I did that in Superior, Colorado, or actually technically, I don't know, I forget what it was, but it was right there next to Boulder, in Boulder County, Colorado. This was after I fled New Mexico for my life, and went through, yeah. Anyway, but at this point, I had proven the parasites. When my symptoms first started, I had no idea how to document it. I spent so much time trying to document it. But how do you document what's invisible, what you can't perceive with your own eyes? Obviously, that's not an intuitive process. But after years of this and just extreme duress, where I'm always in complete fight or flight mode, like complete panic for my life, Like I would go into the emergency room weekly or twice a week, where they would do nothing for me, and my heart rate would be like 188, or something. I don't know, like out of control. And they would be like, "Well, what you need are antipsychotic medications." I'm like, "For an organic cause? No." And that's just it. They want to deem people as crazy who aren't crazy. And this has been the playbook of medicine for forever. You go back to The Imaginary Invalid, which was a play by Moliere written in France in the 17th century. That where it is a comedy that pokes fun at doctors profiting off of illnesses that are real and imagined with elixirs. Well, we got the same thing going on with pharmacology today. And so at this point, when I recorded Bamboozled, my final plea to be heard, because I was on death's doorstep, I didn't know how to frame all of this. So I laid sort of like some of the history of how corrupt medicine has been. And how we've been lied to about bacteria, we've been lied to about viruses, and we've been lied to about parasites for profit and control. But then it wasn't until, and then interestingly, I was going through social media and I was watching a Rogan clip, and he had interviewed Cat Williams back in February, almost a year ago. And Joe asked him, "Man, why do black people smoke menthol cigarettes?" And at first, my reaction was like, "Dude, how can you ask that question? Like that's like really taboo and stuff, right? Like it kind of comes off as racist, Joe." And then I was like, and then the guy's like, "Man, don't ask me that question. That's a loaded question." I was like, "Wait a second, I can answer that because nicotine has anti-helminthic properties, meaning that it is a mild anti-parasitic drug, and the menthol." Okay, and I explained this in a video under Matchbox Sign 39, why Black Americans smoke menthol cigarettes. So much of the African American population, and this isn't true in Africa, this is strictly limited to the United States. Okay, that the smoking of menthol cigarettes and stuff. So much of these people have been parasitized for generations, intentionally, to keep them down. I prove systemic racism, long-standing systemic racism, because the medical community denies these infections. And so picture taking like an earthworm that you get, you dig up or something, and take peppermint extract or something, and imagine pouring that on the earthworm. What's it going to do? It's going to freak out. Imagine putting it on your sensitive spots. It's not comfortable. So it's going to disrupt the cellular operations of these worms. And it's going to help you combat an infection, especially if it's lung-based, like strongyloides. And then this was after my awakening, and what awoken me was figuring out the systemic racism, and then and so then to fast forward to the 90s, the Chappelle Show. I don't know if you ever watched it, but Dave Chappelle, and where he's playing a homeless black crack addict on the urban streets of America, right? He's poking fun at a tragic set of circumstances, right? Well, what's he doing when he's playing the black homeless crack addict? He's got like white lips and he's like tweaking out and things, right? He's also itching. Well, he's itching from the parasites, not because of tactile hallucinations, guys. And why? Because, well, like I already said, these parasites, these helminths, parasitic worms, they're attacking our dopamine systems. So the whole crack epidemic was fabricated to put these people in prison and enslave them, because slavery is legal. Indentured servitude is legal in our prison system. So all these people serving prison sentences for drug charges, it's awful. It's so diabolical. And it has to stop. We need to decriminalize drugs. We absolutely need to. This has all been orchestrated by the government and perpetuated by our medical community that profits off of this. And whatever corporations that profit off of these slaves working in the prison system, whose lives are ruined. They can never integrate back into society once they have a felony charge, even if they're nonviolent. good people. It's crap. It's awful. And so, yeah, that was my huge awakening. That happened around October of 23. I was getting the parasites. They don't like the light, the sun. Now, interesting symbolism there, right? Because who is the light? Who is the way? Christ, God. So what do the parasites represent? Satan, devil, demons. It is so demonic
Reminds me
to
of like
intentionally parasitize.
vampires too, that melt.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's so evil. It's so unbelievable. People aren't even considering it because we've been fed this narrative that we've controlled for parasites of significance when we can't control for lice or scabies or bed bugs. But somehow we control for all the significant ones. And then parasites have been successful on this planet for 300 million years. We've been around for 300,000 years. Boy, that's a bold claim. Where were the parades in the 50s and 60s that we controlled for parasites? And undeniably, right, Mexico has got a huge parasite problem, right? Well, what are the vectors that carry parasitic diseases? Fleas, midges, mosquitoes, flies. Do you think they have to go through customs and immigration from Juarez or any of these border towns? No. So the notion that we've controlled for them with a little scented plumbing and some plumbing is crazy. But we are, well, not we, but they are cultivating them in labs and targeting specific people to make them sick and then profit off of the sickness from the treatments that are ineffective and then blame the patient for not getting better.
And then they don't teach these, medical professionals aren't having courses in
No,
parasites.
they're not taught about parasitology because we've
I never
controlled
learned
for
about it
them.
either. I couldn't believe that that was something that's like just not taught, that like
No,
all of us are going to have
no.
those at some point in our life, that we can naturally detox from them and that we should do that.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
why is
yes.
this not taught to every single person?
Was a profit and control and
Like,
keeping those in power, keeping the status quo running and those in power in power. And why have we had new forms of energy production other than oil and gas? Well, there's likely technology that has been developed that's been suppressed by our government and other world governments to keep the oil and gas industry going. And all these synthetic clothes that we're wearing, be it nylon or polyester, they are toxic. They are toxic. So I really recommend that people buy cotton, linen, wool. You know, the Bible specifically speaks about cotton, wool and linen. But you're not supposed to wear them at the same time because they supposedly cancel each other out. I also think hemp products, hemp clothing and stuff is probably really beneficial too. But that's been suppressed as well. Our entire paper supply can be made by hemp. We don't need to tear down all these trees because hemp grows like weed. It's like so many things have been suppressed or attacked or made taboo just to keep the status quo and the same people in power, the same families in power over and over, generations. And it's disgusting.
it is.
There's mass corruption in this world. And when you go to developing countries and stuff like Egypt, the corruption's in your face. There's people passing notes right in front of your face. It's clear as day. But we do it very covertly in this country. All you have to do is look at all the politicians that have insider trading information on the stock market, from Nancy Pelosi to everybody else, that are ridiculously wealthy when they're making $300,000 a year. They have hundreds of millions. Well, how does that add up, guys? And then we have a revolving door with the FDA and the CDC between the Food and Beverage Administration and companies, corporations, and like Coca-Cola or Pfizer or any of these other pharmaceuticals. And they go into government to implement the policies where they're making a couple $100,000 a year, and then they go work in the corporate field and then they get rewarded big time, and then they go back and it's just a revolving door, and they control what is said and what isn't because they control the media because they're the advertisers. And they control the science, and so much science has been suppressed intentionally.
Yeah.
And it's diabolical.
Yes.
And this needs to get out. This needs to be common knowledge to every person on this planet, because this affects every 8, 9 billion, whatever we have on the planet, either directly or indirectly.
It does.
And it's pure evil. It's pure evil. And these new energy supplies are likely going to be more eco-friendly too than the oil and gas that we use. And we need to stop wearing polyester and nylon and all these synthetic fabrics, because it's hurting us. It's killing us. It's giving us illnesses. And then our food supply is poisoned. You look at the ingredient of basically anything that's processed food, from potato chips to whatever, let's say it contains a bioengineered food ingredient. Why would you want to eat something bioengineered when God made everything perfectly? And that's not even, it's counting all the chemicals in there that you can't pronounce that are poisons. A lot of these things in our food, if you gave a spoonful to a child, you would be arrested for poisoning the child. Yet they're in our foods, everyday foods. And then there's the glyphosate, which is the pesticide that they use on our crops. It's gross.
It is.
And all this chronic illness, it's all been orchestrated. And this attack on masculinity, it's all been orchestrated for the demise of the United States. And it's not limited to the United States, but we're suffering the brunt of it. Because many of these foods that are common every day here are illegal in Europe and Canada, and Australia, New Zealand. New Zealand and Australia are the only two countries in the world where pharmaceuticals are allowed to advertise publicly on like TV and stuff. And New Zealand at least has a little rail guards with that. They have. And they go and they tell you all these catastrophic side effects while everybody's smiling and happy and dancing in a ring around the rosy circle. It's terrible.
It is.
It breaks my heart. And I just travel, and this is largely socioeconomic too. When I'm traveling the country and stuff, when I'm in poor areas, be them white or black or Hispanic, I'm sorry, everybody's like overweight and just fighting every day to just get through their work. And then they come home and they pass out and, eat all that processed food because it's cheaper than the good food. Well, the rich people get to shop at Whole Foods and eat organic, and it's awful. And many of these rich people are associated with Freemasonry, and they know all of this. They've been informed. Our beer supply has been poisoned. Much of our liquor supply probably has too. It's awful. And it's an epic time of evil. I really feel like it's like into day stuff. That the devil's been running the show for far too long on this planet, and it's time for the light to shine. It is time for truth tellers to speak up and find their voice, and point out the corruption and put an end to it. Because that the fact that all these sugars and high fructose corn syrup receive tremendous subsidies from the federal government. It's ridiculous. Where fruits and vegetables don't get any. Just corn and wheat, that you can turn into processed foods gets the subsidies. And then the health benefits I'm finding out of a carnivore diet are really, really good. But it's I don't know, man. It's orchestrated evil to such a degree that it's really unbelievable. That the whole COVID virus was planned out. It was the pandemic, as many people say. A lot of people I learned on TikTok, I picked this up on TikTok, where people started not calling the global elites, they started calling them the global deletes, as in they're deleting us one at a time because they have a mass extermination agenda. Guys like Klaus Schwab, where their goal is to have like a global population of 500 million people. And much of this AI stuff is guess who that's run by? CIA and corporate interest and Masonic groups. It's terrible. And many of these wars have been fabricated on unjust grounds. Why? Because it's all linked together. The military-industrial complex, the oil and gas industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the food and beverage complex, it's all linked together. It's an incestual, diabolical plan. It's eugenics on such a degree, but they're attacking people like me who are intelligent. So it's not just strictly eugenics. They're just doing anything to preserve their narrative. It's and it's so funny because and most of these people are NPD or narcissistic personality disorder or other personality disorders, and these are spiritual conditions. I'm sorry, personality disorder is a misnomer. They are spiritual diseases, spiritual afflictions. And if you go back to the book of Genesis and the Garden of Eden story, well, what does the serpent say to Eve? Is that what God really said? That's gaslighting. And we can embody the dark or the light, and we make that choice early on as children or as young adults. And when I saw my mom always putting on a face and always, and never being authentic, I was like, I'm not doing that. But when I was in high school, I had to make excuses for my survival, both at school and at home. But when I took off to college, I made an oath. I don't have to do that anymore. And I chose a path of honesty, like complete honesty to a fault, almost. And so my dad's been orchestrating with other Freemasons and stuff since my demise. College roommates or other people, they've all been there, that I would be so sick that I couldn't clean or shower and things, And then they would harp on me because I wouldn't clean the bathroom often enough or dig the hair out of the drain of the shower or something. Like I was just like, but they did so like diabolically, and they were orchestrated and taught to do this, like to kill me, to kill my soul, my essence. And it didn't work. And I take great pride in that it didn't work. But it almost worked. And I don't know. This is heavy stuff. It's really heavy stuff. And so unfortunately, I kind of want to fast forward, jump over a lot of stuff and go to the more recent times. It was I was crippled. My career, my academic things. I was working on concurrent PhDs. I was a cognitive neuroscience researcher at the Veterans Administration in Albuquerque after I graduated summa cum laude from the University of New Mexico when I was 30 or 31. I had to go back. I started out in engineering and got my degree in psychology and statistics. And then worked at the VA and ran this research lab, published co-author in various areas, and then went off to University of Colorado Boulder to get concurrent PhDs in clinical psychology and neuroscience, where much of the faculty and others were sabotaging me, roommates and other people with pathogens, with direct energy weapons, with abuse, that because I wasn't able to perform at the level that they expected me. I was barely getting by. I scraped together a master's degree, but it was I limped to the finish line on that. I was very lucky to. But they deemed my issues, the psychiatrist I saw, as it being due to ADHD. And so I got hooked on Adderall. And unfortunately, well, the whole time in graduate school, I took Adderall as prescribed. Actually, I took it less than prescribed because it wasn't helping me at any level, on any degree. So I actually had bottles of it building up. And then once I took my leave of absence from graduate school, losing all my life dreams that I'd worked so hard to get these PhDs. That was my goal. I didn't attend my college graduation. I didn't go to my master's degree graduation. I was like, it's PhD or nothing. And that was unfairly stripped from me. Anyways, after I took my leave of absence, one day I was like, well, I don't know why. I tried taking 2 pills of Adderall instead of 1. Everything clicked. I could think, I could talk, I could be social. My depression lifted. I was like, this is incredible. Well, it only had a 4-hour lifespan window. And then shortly after that, your tolerance builds up. So then it becomes ineffective. But then you get like, oh my God, I have a solution for my problems in a pill. But really, it's due to the infections, neurological infections that have been denied. So then I ended up moving back to Santa Fe, New Mexico, in with my parents because I was bedbound and depressed, and I had multiple jobs sabotaged and just left and right. It's been anyways. Everything was orchestrated for me to. I've never been one to really desire like hardcore drugs like opiates or meth or anything like that. Never. But everything was done to orchestrate through either the CIA or Freemasonry to make me want to use to get relief for my symptoms that I couldn't get help from the medical community. It was all orchestrated. It's a very long story, but and I don't want to get into details right now. But it was all orchestrated, and I tried it one time, and I got relief. It was incredible. But then I was like, no, I'm not doing meth. I'm not going to do it. So I go back to my parents' house, and I'm sitting there 23 hours a day, my face stuffed in a pillow, and the only relief I ever get is picturing that revolvers in the back of my throat for a nanosecond. For months, it went on, maybe 6 months. I don't know how long it was. I was in hell. I was in pure fucking hell. Excuse my language. I was in pure hell. And nobody was helping. And everybody was blaming me. My parents were all in on this. They orchestrated it. And I was like, well, either I can take my life or I can try self-medicating with the strongest stimulant I know how to acquire. And so I went out with the goal of trying to find it, and I found it. That's when my parasitosis started. My noticeable parasitosis. I've always been parasitized, but when you have a powerful stimulant inside of you, these parasites get amped up by the dopamine because it's the feel good neurotransmitter, so it makes them feel good too, and gives them energy. So they're like 100 times more aggressive because they're feeding off of you, right? So if you're on something, they're on something. It was all orchestrated, and then it's everything's been done with my demise, and it's likely a lot of this, and my family all turned against me, my sisters and stuff, likely because I believe my grandfather left me a large sum of inheritance, and they don't want me to have that inheritance. And so they did everything to portray me as crazy and a drug addict and a loser. And, it's awful. It's awful. And so, but the beauty of it is that I did learn the parasitic etiology to these conditions, and I'm able to share it with everybody now. And I learned how to treat them. And doctors have tried to kill me. They've literally tried to kill me, be it from an incision they did in my colonoscopy to other things. They've given me tardive dyskinesia, which are the involuntary mouth movements and the body rocking from all these medications. I was an adherent patient for 30 years because I placed my faith in medicine and science. And but there are behavioral changes through diet and exercise, cardiovascular exercise, long walks, sunshine. It's critical. Grounding, earthing, it's critical. Right now, I'm barefoot on the tile floor to keep myself grounded. And right before all this, I've been listening on headphones to frequency and music in the background because that helps combat the direct energy weapons from creating intense brain fog and fatigue. 2, 3 years ago, I couldn't have had this conversation. I was a vegetable. But then I found I was watching a podcast by this guy called he's a psychiatrist, a Harvard trained psychiatrist. He has a channel called The Healthy Gamer, where he makes most of his podcasts basically for young men that are struggling today. And he did one on brain fog, and he mentioned this new research of this treatment for brain fog, which I've been searching for relief from for my entire life. Crippling brain fog. And so it's a supplement. It's a flavonoid, something that occurs naturally in peanut shells and vegetables and stuff. But apparently you can't get enough in your diet for it to have benefits on the neurological brain level. And so I went and read the research myself because I have my research background and I can read scientific and medical journals, no problem. And then I gave it a try for brain fog. And not only did it, after a couple of days, did my thinking clear up. After about 2, 3 weeks, I went from sleeping 14 to 24 hours straight a day to sleeping 7. I'm having 2, 3, 4 times as much energy. And then the orthostatic intolerance, when I would stand up and get dizzy or lightheaded or pass out, that went away. Now that's a symptom of POTS. And then the fatigue is MECFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, idiopathic hypersomnia. All these have parasitic etiologies. But I've gotten like, and in one supplement, a flavonoid called luteolin, changed everything. It gave me relief from all those. It didn't give me relief from my gastrointestinal issues or my skin issues, but it gave me neurological relief, which was just incredible. And it was a godsend. And I ended up contacting the principal investigator of this researcher who saved my life multiple times who is now based out of Cyprus in the Mediterranean. He was a faculty member of Tufts Medical, and he must have had some sort of falling out due to the malicious intent in medicine, and he wanted to make a difference. Anyways, he's very well with the parasitic etiology of all these conditions and wanted to find a natural remedy to give people. And so he did a lot of research on luteolin, and his research applies to anything from Alzheimer's to brain fog to Parkinson's to MECFS to long COVID. Long COVID is MECFS, and that has a parasitic etiology too, guys. Anybody who's suffering from long COVID and is bedbound or exhausted all the time, there's relief. This isn't a lifelong affliction. If you eat the right diet, you get exercise, and you take the right supplements. And there are millions, if not billions, suffering needlessly today. And it's, anyways, he saved my life multiple times, and I should have died of gastrointestinal issues. And when I had that colonoscopy in February 2023, they created a lesion down there. So every single time I wiped, I would just get mass blood, and you could see worms and stool everywhere on dripping onto the bathroom floor and all over the toilet, and it was just. And I would go to the emergency room, and they're like, "Well, your blood work is fine, so clearly this is all in your head." No. They'll do anything to keep this narrative alive, and especially since they're attacking these people that are deemed parasites of society. Well, the parasite analogy is really appropriate, but it's been misappropriated. It's the global deletes who are the parasites. Parasites are very visually elusive. They're very busy working, and they're in control. They control much of our thoughts and behaviors. They control much of our appetite, food cravings. They're the work of Satan. And so I tied this all back to the book of Genesis, Garden of Eden story, and I did a whole YouTube on that. Where I don't think the forbidden fruit was fruit per se. It's this leafy green found in the Horn of Africa, southern Arabian Peninsula, called gat, which is akin to amphetamine that locals are notorious for chewing on. Well, guess what body of water is right there? The Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea. Well, what in Semitic languages, I speak Arabic, right? In Semitic languages like Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, Aden can easily be translated into Eden. And so maybe God was saying, hey, you can have whatever you want here, but stay away from God. Stay away from that stimulant drug, and you'll be golden. And the serpent said, is that what God really said? Gaslighted Eve. And so much illness has parasitic etiologies that are denied because it's satanic. It's pure evil. To profit off of illness. And so I'm really grateful that I've been able to learn so much and share so much. And it was very difficult for me to frame this in a way that was digestible for those who aren't awakened. I don't mean to digestible be place a pun there, but that because everybody really believes in the programming that we've controlled the parasites when we haven't. And so being able to frame this in a way that people can actually appreciate. Well, that took me a long time, but I did it. Between the menthol cigarette smoking and debunking restless leg syndrome and connecting it to a variety of other conditions, I did it. But guess what that did? Got me put on a terrorist watch list. I've had good Americans trying to kill me and sabotage me because they've been told that I'm a known or suspected terrorist. Well, why not the white kid who was born and raised half his life in the Middle East who speaks Arabic, even though I'm a Christian? I've always been very spiritual in nature. It's ridiculous. I have no ties or I have no affiliation. I don't value any terrorist causes. No, the terrorists are the ones putting me on the terrorist list. I've been nothing but terrorized. For speaking truth, for standing in light. It's been a hard road. And only by the grace of God am I alive today. And this doctor that I referred to in Cyprus, who got me on ivermectin, the anti-parasitic, that is highly taboo, that Joe Rogan got attacked for being a horse dewormer. No, it won the Nobel Prize for people. And there are many different things I've done to increase my health. Since I've gone off all psychiatric medications and I've changed my diet, not only am I sleeping better, I have more energy, as my head's clearer, everything like that. It's my skin's better. I've dropped. I probably weighed about 255 pounds a year ago. I don't know when it was exactly, but now I weigh 195, 190. I don't know. I haven't been weighed in a while, but 190 to 195 range. That's a significant weight drop because many of these psychiatric medications cause weight gain. And what else do? They numb out your senses. They numb out your emotions. They make you sensory numb. They make you spiritually numb. Everything's been designed to disconnect us from our spiritual natures. It's terrible. And unfortunately, Freemasonry has infiltrated many of our churches and twisted the narratives there. And now so many successful people who aren't part of the in crowd look at all these people that are suffering and blame them because the system blames them rather than the broken system. And so now we have like this covert civil war going on with the targeting program and other things to keep the status quo, to keep that all these people are pushing the global deletes agenda, law enforcement, whatever. We've been bamboozled. We've all been fooled by Satan. We've been fooled by the devil's game. And it's very hard for people to acknowledge that they've been played, but we've been played, all of us. Every single one of us has been programmed. And it's very easy to spot other people that have been programmed, but it's very, very difficult to accept that you have been. And everybody really needs to start asking a few stupid questions. Could there be a parasitic etiology caused to your poor health? And how have I been programmed? How have I been fed into the propaganda? because excuse me, um, because we've all been fooled. It's the great deception. It's the great deception, and the pharmaceutical and medical community are at the forefront of it, and our government is at the forefront of it. And I really hope that Bobby Kennedy can make some sweeping changes with our medical reforms, but with I don't want to get into politics right now, but I have my reservations that any significant changes will come out of this. I think the Maha movement, the Make America Healthy movement, was largely fabricated to get to get him the support he needed to. But maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. And RFK Jr., I really hope he can do sweeping reforms and that we can make this country healthy again, and a country based on integrity and truth. And not to, this isn't limited to the United States, these problems. It's just worse here than other places. And I'd really like to see the United States be a role model for the world. I want to be a role model for how you can overcome getting the full course press from our government and our medical community and everybody else. Full court press. And that if you go to God, you can do it. And if you take ownership and accountability, that's what we need. We just need a big old. I made this X post the other day. I was like, there's this great new medication to cure all of your problems. It's called the accountability pill. We all need to take a little bit of the accountability pill because none of us are faultless. We're all sinners. We all make mistakes, right? And that's Christ's message. I completely resonate with everything that Christ said, but I do not resonate with a lot of what modern Christianity has become. It's become a lot of churches are almost like country clubs, just like elitist, and there's just like lots of gossip. I'm sorry, gossip is spellcraft. It's witchcraft. When you talk negatively about people, you're basically. It's awful. It's evil. We really need to find a unifying message that we're all in this together. And that if we don't start taking accountability for our actions and our mistakes and just project everything on the people on the bottom, humanity's doomed. And that everybody needs a big old accountability session, especially those who are making the policies and procedures, especially those people who are intentionally making people sick.
I agree. This is so valuable, everything that you're saying, and it's so true. And I think this audience, especially listening, is going to really relate to it on a lot of levels because I think people who have been targeted, who have been susceptible to extreme abuse and the cover-up of it, they're the main victims of these perpetrators who are trying to cover up for, these crimes against humanity that have been done. And they do it with pills and fake remedies and everything that you said. And I wanted to ask you, for people who might be waking up to this and sort of new to it and very overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, I have all this stuff wrong with me, and I think I just want to throw away everything that the doctor said and start a new path. Do you have any recommendations for a starting point or things that maybe some tips of how somebody can get started on this journey that you've been on for a while now?
Well, first of all, I want to preface that I don't have a medical degree. While I have a clinical background and a research background, I can't offer medical advice, but I can tell you what's worked for me. I can tell you that long walks, lots of sunshine, grounding, earthing, diet. I get great benefit from eggs. I've gotten great benefit from the carnivore diet. I've gotten great benefits from various herbs, anywhere from cinnamon to cilantro to garlic. A lot of these are anti-parasitics. There's also an herb called wormwood. The man who saved my life, the MD PhD that's located in Cyprus, he has a lot of great products. One, can I share it with you here? I have the bottle right here.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
I'm
sure.
not making any sort of kickback. This man saved my life. Anyways,
Yeah, no, we love
well,
recommendations on here, books and things like
yeah,
supplements.
it's called Brain Gain.
Here, I'll
It's made by a company called Algonaut, which is written by him. It's algonot.com, where science and natural remedies meet. And this is all backed up by hard
brain
science.
game.
So it has berberine, which helps lower your blood sugar, which, many of these chronic illnesses like type 2 diabetes are reversible. Anyways, biotin, folinic acid, lutein, which is what saved me, and quercetin, olive oil and stuff. And it's been incredible. Another thing is like L-theanine is an amino acid that if you mix it with a little caffeine, like your coffee or tea or something, it really has a lot of neuroprotective and helps you think more clearly. I don't know. You notice my teeth issues. That's not from the drugs, guys. That's from people putting stuff in my toothpaste and my toothbrushes. Freemasons and stuff that have sabotaged it. I've lost a few, and a few healthy teeth were pulled by dentists that didn't have to be pulled. I lost this tooth this last summer while I was just. I've been clean from all drugs for since over a year now. But I don't know. It's been a long road. But my hand was forced into drugs. I've never been. That's never been part of me. Everything I've ever done has always just been more functional and to overcome or to make my chronic illnesses more manageable. That the doctors have never offered me any help. And you can hear all that story on my social media in great detail. What are some other things? Fruit is great. And all the fiber is really critical. I really recommend staying away from processed foods, chocolate, sweets, things with high fructose corn syrup, carbohydrates in general, especially the processed ones, whole wheat, white bread, even wheat bread. Whole grains are much better for your digestive system and stuff than because these parasites they not only feed off our dopamine, but they also feed off of sugars and they feed off of carbohydrates. So if you can go carb free, it's really hard because sugar is like the hardest drug to quit because it's everywhere. It's in our bread. If you look at the labels, sugar is in everything or high fructose corn syrup, and it's evil. And this has all been orchestrated. Um, and so yeah, I really recommend stop eating fast food. And really prepare your own meals, even if you aren't much of a cook, just grill up some hamburger or make some eggs or something, um, and um, there are a lot of really great supplements out there. Turmeric is really great. Turmeric, you can either, use it as a spice or you can take it in capsule or pill form. That has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties, and almost all these chronic conditions are due to chronic inflammation, be it in the intestines, in the brain, or other parts of the body. And why is there all this inflammation? Because you have infections. Your body is either fighting off parasites, poisons from our food supply, or whatever. And then there's also this great toothpaste that I tried. It's called SP6. It's a probiotic toothpaste. It's a super probiotic 6 toothpaste. With the teeth I have remaining are remarkably healing and getting better since I've switched to this. No fluoride. Fluoride's killing us. It's calcifying our pineal glands and keeping us from our spiritual natures. And it's in our water supply. It's in our toothpaste. Really recommend avoiding fluoride toothpastes. I don't know. I should make an entire list of things that have really helped me, but there are a lot of natural remedies oh, another thing is it's like there's always been the old wives' tale that if you have a stomach ache, drink some peppermint tea, right? Well, why is that? Well, Go back to the whole why smoke menthol cigarettes. If you're drinking peppermint tea and you have worms in your belly, makes sense, huh? Everything makes sense. So, but it's interesting that the worms don't like the sunlight and that it's all integrated. It's all they're definitely the devil's work, especially when they are intentionally leashed on people and that our diet has been intentionally fabricated for the benefit not of us but for parasites and to make us sick.
Thank you for that. I love those options that you gave too, because none of them are like super hard to find. Those are all really easy things that somebody can not be overwhelmed with, getting a peppermint tea and taking fluoride out of their toothpaste, grounding, taking time to take a walk and exercise. Like that's all stuff that's like very easy to implement in your life. And I think
Yeah,
if you can
yeah,
get some sort of like foundational change and
mhm,
not think about, making all these really crazy expensive and super time consuming changes and,
right,
things that are going to break you financially. People
mhm,
are more motivated to make change when they're like, oh, that's it. That's all I got to do. Or like these simple things to start. Like I can start
yeah,
doing that.
yeah,
And then whenever you start to feel good, you start to be more productive and you can start adding on to that routine and taking things out and mitigating sugar a little bit. And
yeah,
even with that, like it's not easy to go, 100% without sugar all the time. And that can be overwhelming. It's like take it with
yeah. It's really
Starbucks
overwhelming.
coffee or get it without whenever you go to Starbucks, like get black coffee and
Right.
instead of, your frap. Like you
Yeah.
can just start there and like replace something that you're having a ton of sugar with and just take it out. Or if you drink soda, just stop drinking soda and drink a tea instead.
Yeah, yeah. It was really hard for me to quit sodas. I did that a few years ago, and it was quite a hard transition. And I started switching to sparkling water, but then the sparkling actually creates like a lot of digestive issues. So
Totally.
then I switched to like spring water, which I find a lot more benefits because you get spring water likely doesn't have fluoride in it, unlike our tap water. But a lot of herbal teas are really, really great. Not just peppermint, but there are tons of different ones. I just tried getting a new one with Morgana, which is some plant, I don't know, that's supposed to have amazing healing qualities and cinnamon and all these other teas that are really great. So it's becoming a tea guy. I've always been a coffee soda guy and now I'm a tea guy. So.
Well, tea is also super alkaline, which is also really good for regulating
Mhm.
pH levels, which are so acidic with, having that processed food diet too. So that's a good change. And you can I feel like whenever you start to like wean yourself off these sodas and like all the coffee that we drink, like you can find a lot of satisfaction in having tea that has a little bit less caffeine, but you can get it with these different, even they even make like mushroom tea where you can get lion's
I,
mane in your tea, which like improves your
oh,
cognition and makes you
oh
feel like
yeah.
a caffeine boost.
Thank you for mentioning mushrooms. Mushrooms are critical, like anything from like lion's mane. Oh, and I also want to push that there are a lot of clinical properties from in various drugs that were deemed in 1970 in the Nixon administration that were deemed Schedule 1 that have amazing clinical properties. Joe Rogan's been bringing a lot of interest into this with like ibogaine for the treatment of PTSD and opiate addiction. He had a guest on a couple of weeks ago from Kentucky who is a lawmaker who was trying to get ibogaine research in to help the veterans and stuff. But it has like opiate addiction is very, very difficult to treat, and usually people are just pushed onto methadone or what's the other one called? I'm just slipping right now, and so it's just switching from one addiction to another. Basically, that's more manageable. But with ibogaine treatment, it's a one-time treatment, had allegedly has a 70% effectiveness on opioid addiction. Like never again. Like you do this once in a controlled environment with ibogaine. And if you do a second treatment, it goes up to 97% for opiate addiction. I really recommend checking out that Joe Rogan. And it was with Governor Rick Perry, who was the former governor of Texas, and this gentleman from Kentucky. And they're really pushing ibogaine for not just for veterans with PTSD, but because that's obviously a population everybody can support, right? Or there are veterans, but also in the treatment of addiction. And much of this opiate addiction has been manufactured just like the crack epidemic was. Our fentanyl problem was all orchestrated as well. And that many of our social problems today have all been orchestrated by our government, and it's really diabolical.
It is, yes. Going back to PTSD, not all people that have PTSD were soldiers in the military. Like
Yeah.
survivors have the same, response to the abuse that they partook in. Sometimes it's even worse than what a soldier comes home with. So it's a really good, looking into things that help veterans. I think the crossover to this community, targeted individuals and survivors is huge, and a lot of these things that you mentioned too are so good for just trauma, like not just parasites and things like that, but if you're going through trauma and you're trying to heal from it and you're eating a crap diet, you're just sitting on your couch, you're not getting sunlight, like all of this stuff can help all forms of trauma in our body and all dysfunction. And it's so good that you're recommending all of this because I think, whether you've been through extreme trauma or even just a little bit, like we should all just be doing these things. Like it's terrible how far from like being an actual human we are these days. Like now we're like sitting in front of computers and on our
I
phones
know.
and like we're not going outside, we're not socializing face to face, we're not eating food that's like grown, we're eating just crap. And it's like, man, like these things, it's crazy that we have to like be educated on like how to live a natural life as we were intended, but now's the time to do it. Cause like you said, I mean, 70% of people reporting that they have some type of, parasitic infection, in their body, parasites. And that's probably just like, I would guess it's probably a lot higher than that. That's probably just what's like being reported or what they know,
At
which
its
is really
clinical level.
scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And another thing about trauma is that long-term trauma. I have complex PTSD and stuff, obviously, from everything I've gone through, and but I've been healing from that. But the thing about obviously having a head trauma, like a concussion or something, is going to create an inflammatory response in your brain. But the same is true with trauma, with psychological or emotional trauma, that it will create an inflammatory response. If you're in fight or flight mode, then your body is going to produce more inflammatory responses throughout it. So you're going to be sicker. So if you can find ways to effectively cope with your trauma, be it through behavior or diet or other means, please do that. And then I also wanted to say that I've also gotten a lot of great benefit from listening to healing frequency music. So like 432 hertz, 528 hertz, various things I found on YouTube and stuff under my handle subjectively dash observe. I have a whole playlist of healing frequencies. But I mean, you can just search and then find a lot of these. There's also a right frequency that's specific to parasites. It's 1150 is the hertz. I believe I know that there's a lot of healing power, not only in music, but also listening to various frequencies, also bells, church bells and stuff. There's a reason why those were kind of removed from our society because of their healing properties, just again, demonic. Um, and we are perceptual beings, be it touch or sight or hearing, and there are healing properties through sound or food or sunlight or human touch, human connection, and it's all these problems can be addressed if we can identify them. And then get them out to the public that this is something we can overcome together.
Thank you so much. And where can people connect with you? You have so much good content out. Where are you at? You mentioned a couple places, but I'll bring them up. And you have a website too that we didn't even get to talk about if you want to share.
Right. Well, I haven't put the website together yet. I threw something that AI generated that's horrible, but it's under notthatkindofcrazy.com. I was poking fun at the medical community, just like I was with Matchbox Sign, which is my main social media handle, because the Matchbox Sign is a clinical tool doctors use that if a person with delusional parasitosis comes in with evidence of their parasitosis, they're deemed as having the Matchbox sign. Well, if you have an infection that doctors deny and you're bringing in things that are parasitic related but don't look like worms, like wouldn't it be rational to bring in that evidence, like the rational thing? And so they've made that a diagnostic tool for making you crazy when you're bringing evidence that supports that you actually have a legitimate infection. And so it's a catch-22. It's sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't type scenario where doctors are denying that you have an infection. You bring in evidence of having an infection, and that just supports that you're crazy when you're not. It's awful. It's awful. And so the matchbox sign is that people in used to bring in those old wooden matchbox things, whatever, that you could push out, and they would put evidence in the matchboxes. Well, people today do it in like Ziploc bags and things, but it's still called the matchbox sign clinically. It's a clinical tool. It's a diagnostic tool. And then I'm on X under matchbox sign 369. My old account was matchbox sign 39. I was on Substack, Matchbox Sign 39 as well. I'm not sure where else I am. Yeah. I took down my Facebook accounts because I don't trust Meta. I just I don't. And yeah, especially with all how Zuckerberg's admitted to suppressing information on the COVID virus that was actually turned out to be accurate, that was deemed misinformation by the government. And he actively suppressed that, the discussion of those topics. So meta platforms like Facebook and Instagram, I don't trust at all. So, yeah.
And it's such an easy way to support whistleblowers and survivors. I get a lot of people that say, what can I do to help? What can I do to help? And I know not a lot of people have time. Like you said, we're in this like loop where we're working our faces off, hardly able to keep ends meet sometimes. And, then we have all these responsibilities to take care of all these people. And it's really overwhelming being a human these days, And so I get that not everybody has the time to spend hours and hours and hours advocating, but such an easy way to support people who are doing all of this for free, like you are, Gregory, is to just go follow and support online. Go
Yeah.
subscribe to their YouTube, get their views up, share the videos with a friend or put them on your social media platform. Follow on Twitter and just go share the post that these creators are making. Go to their website and share it with somebody, like there's really easy ways for free that we can do a lot with, a little. And I think that it's wonderful that you've created so many videos. You have these two YouTube channels, like he was saying, Subjectively Observed, and then the Matchbox one. Both have tons of videos on it. Sorry, my dog's barking. Buddy, it's okay. Hours and hours of content. You guys can dive into this for free. Like it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to go sign up for a membership somewhere. He's not trying to bait you with, taking your money, like doing all this out of the goodness of his heart for free, and I think it's wonderful. We have so much to learn and you have so many videos between both of these channels. You have provided lots of resources on your videos too and education, which I love. You're on Twitter. And if people want to get in touch with you, is Twitter probably the best way to?
Twitter would be a great way to get in touch with me. Yeah, yeah, X. And but I am going to work on the website, not that kind of crazy.com, and update it. I want to provide a lot of resources and link to medical and scientific papers that are accurate, because much of our science is bogus today. So I want to link accurate science and stuff and things that have been proven to be effective in terms of diet and behavioral changes that are improving people's lives. I also want to maybe create some sort of area where I could sell, I don't know, like coffee mugs or T-shirts or things that sort of poke fun at things and find the humor and the silver lining in things, maybe make some income that way, because it's been real difficult for me to earn any sort of living. And I was working on the site yesterday, but I got hit by a direct energy weapon so badly yesterday, I couldn't think straight
Oh.
yesterday. But fortunately, today's much better. I never know what each day is going to bring with me right now, but it's nothing's going to deter me from pushing my message and doing what I was put here on this planet to do, and that was to educate people about the truth.
And we're so lucky that you're doing that. I'm so grateful that you're, healthy and that you're keeping yourself as safe as possible so you can continue to do this, and I hope you do find a way that we can donate to you or purchase something from you, buy a book, That's
Oh
another.
yeah, I have lots of books well, I've started really writing a couple, but I haven't like actually gotten close to towards anything publishable, but
That's
definitely be on the
exciting.
lookout for yeah.
Absolutely. And if you come out with other projects, let me know. I'll bring you back on and we can promote it and talk about it and,
Awesome.
send people your way. That would be wonderful, and um I really appreciate you all for just sort of waking up to all of this so recently. It's only been, a year and a half, 2 years or so, it seems. You've put together so much, and the fact that you're here sharing it, that should give a lot of people hope on what you can do in a short amount of time with healing, detoxing your body, getting your mind right, and doing it with in ways that are conducive to your time and your energy and your financial means. And you're such a bright example of what's on the other side of healing. And I think you're going to be a big beacon of hope for people. And I know you're just getting started on this journey. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about today or that we didn't get to before we close up?
Nothing that's jumping to mind right now. I just want to express my gratitude for having this opportunity to have this conversation with you and to share this information with everybody. It's really wonderful, and it's thank you.
We're so lucky to get to learn from you. I always feel so thankful and just grateful and honored that we get to hear from people like you, because you guys are the ones that we were never supposed to hear. You guys are the ones that they've tried to bury, but you were seeds all along, and look at you. It's really neat to see where you were to where you are now. I say to people, it's like, gosh, nobody would ever guess if they just met you on the streets what you went through growing up and what you've overcome. They would just think that you've had a wonderful life, that you're in a great position, that you're not going through, these constant attacks with these energy weapons and all this other opposition coming up against you, and what a miracle it is that you're able to be here today and give us this information. So I look forward to seeing you grow and, welcome you back anytime. You're welcome to come on. And for everybody listening, I encourage you guys, please go connect with Gregory. Go DM him. If you guys have puzzle pieces that can help contribute to his story, things that, his childhood or even now as a targeted individual, the things that he goes through, go reach out and connect. Community is the other thing that they never wanted. They didn't want you guys to be heard. They definitely don't want you guys to connect. That's a great way that we can, go against this grain and, come up against our opposition is being organized like they are, coming together and fighting this together. They've wanted us apart and it's worked so far, and social media has made it possible for all of us to come together. So go connect with Gregory. If you guys have questions for him too, he's a wealth of knowledge with resources. I'll try to link some of the products that he mentioned today. That way you guys can just go right in the show notes. But if you guys want to know anything else that he's done, I'm sure he just scratched the tip of the iceberg with things that
Yeah.
he tried, things that have worked. So if you guys have a specific question too, don't be afraid to go reach out. He's super accessible. Just go DM him, communicate with him, follow him, and go support his website and his YouTubes. And like I said, share his content. That's such a great way that you guys can give back to this community and support survivors and whistleblowers and targeted individuals who are, going the extra mile to create all this free content for us. The whole purpose of it is to learn and share. So please do that. Go subscribe to him. I'll have all my platforms in the show notes as well that I'm on. Keep in touch with us wherever, we're at. Like he said, he got locked out of one of his YouTubes. I've had two of my channels deleted. So the more you guys can keep up with us, the more you can support us. If, a platform doesn't work out or if we leave, you guys have multiple ways that you guys can keep in touch with us. So I'll have all that in the show notes, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and we will see you next time.